Hello there, this is Out Motorsports. My name is Jake and this is the Mazda MX-30 EV. This is the brand's first electric car, and while it's only being sold in California to start, they did have one here in the Washington, D.C. area, and I was able to get a hold of it for a few days. Now, this car only has a range of about 100 miles, but in some cases, you might have a car like this and want to take it a little further than that stated range for what you might call a short road trip. So I've actually got a dinner date that's about 150 miles from my house here in Washington, D.C. So let's get behind the wheel so I don't miss it, but we'll talk about what this MX-30 is, talk all about the range, where it's being sold, and then we'll talk about the actual experience going 150 miles with an EV that's only rated for 100. All right, so let's talk about what this Mazda MX-30 EV is. It is a front-wheel drive, kind of hatchbacky sort of thing. It's more or less the size of the CX-30, if you know that small subcompact crossover. Kind of similar size. I feel like it rides a little bit lower, but regardless, that's about the size you're gonna get. There is a back seat here. It is usable enough for 6-footers if you're careful about how you've got your seats arranged in the front. And entry is through these side doors that Mazda calls freestyle doors. You might have heard the term suicide doors, which they don't really love to hear for various reasons. But in any case, kind of throws back to the old Mazda RX-8 with the same door arrangement. Kind of a cool idea, and it looks kind of neat from the outside. As far as drivetrain in this MX-30, this is a front-wheel drive vehicle. They are only going to be front-wheel drive. It has a single motor on the front axle, and it makes 143 horsepower and 200 pound-feet of torque. And it makes that power and torque thanks to a 35.5 kilowatt-hour battery pack that runs kind of, under the floor and all around underneath you. Of course, everyone's going to talk about range. This car is rated at 100 miles of range. You might get a few more miles than that out of it if you're not running the air conditioning, if you're driving very, very conservatively. But I am leaving Washington, D.C. right now with 97% charge, and the guessometer on the left side of the screen here shows 100 miles exactly. Like I said, I've got a dinner date that I'm heading out to. It is my mom's birthday. I'm heading up to see her, and she and my dad live about 150 miles from me. So I will have to stop and charge this thing one time along the way. Now, the benefit of this being a fairly small battery pack is that it doesn't take that long to charge. Mazda says you can do 0% to 80% in 36 minutes. Now, your charging speed is, of course, dependent on all sorts of different things, including the state of charge. Obviously, once you get to about 80%, the battery charge rate is going to taper off. But I will be showing up with probably 50% battery life, and then I will be able to juice right back up to where I need to be to get the rest of the way. And when it comes to charging speed, the fastest speed you're going to get out of this MX-30 at its peak is apparently 50 kilowatts. That's kind of slow. It's about what you can do with something like a Chevy Bolt, but with a car like this, with range like this, road trips beyond about what I'm doing are not going to be something that happens often, if ever. It's likely something you would do maybe once or twice, but more of your charging than anything is going to be at home or somewhere like when you're out shopping and you can afford to leave the car on a charger for a little bit of time. This MX-30 is a little bit of an interesting situation in that the first model year is truly only being sold in California. They're only selling about 560 of these cars. And if you look under the hood, or the frunk as you might want to call it, there's no storage space up there. There's the electric components for the motor and controller and all that, and then there's this giant amount of space over on the driver's side of the engine bay, or the frunk. And that is because there are allegedly kind of maybe sort of plans to have a rotary range extender offered with this MX-30 here in the United States. And then looking around the interior, we can talk about that while I'm crawling through traffic. It is pretty typical Mazda, and that's to say pretty nice. You do have these really cool, interesting seats. These have kind of almost a wool feeling to them. And then the tops of the doors are also this wool-esque material with a lighter white kind of faux leather going on, and then this orangey trim line down the middle and stitching. You've also got bits of cork throughout the interior, which is a neat little throwback and nod to Mazda's heritage before they made cars. They were actually a manufacturer of, I believe, simulated cork. So you've got cork down here, you've got it all the way around the sides of the console, you've got it at the inside of the door pulls. Kind of an interesting little touch. Really curious how that holds up over time. I'm sure they've done plenty of testing, but definitely very cool. So you still have the widescreen Mazda Connect infotainment up here, paired to, in this case, a Bose sound system. This is not a touchscreen because Mazda in the past has made claims that they don't believe touchscreens are safe compared to a rotary dial, similar to BMW's iDrive if you've used that. Now, the interesting thing here is that they're correct, it's not a touchscreen, and I happen to believe the same thing that Mazda does. But then you have this climate control down here by the shifter, which is also a touchscreen. It's a touchscreen that happens to have hard buttons on the sides for, I would say, 90% of all the controls you would need. Kind of an interesting mix and an interesting set of kind of differing philosophies. All right, so let's talk highway driving in the Mazda MX-30. So I can put my foot down here, and this is not a ton of power, but it's adequate. It is torquey enough at city speeds. It is punchy enough at city speeds. At highway speeds, it is adequate. It will get up and do 75, 80 miles an hour if you really want it to, but you can tell you're only working with 143 horsepower pretty easily. As far as highway manners are concerned, though, the chassis itself is really stable. It's not twitchy at all. It doesn't feel like it wants to be blown around or like it's on super skinny, terrible tires or anything. If you're trying to compare this to a BMW i3, which is, a slightly older variant of the idea of an electric city-first vehicle that, can do highway driving but is meant for city driving over anything, this, I think, feels a little bit more planted than an i3 does. It's definitely happy enough out here on the highway doing real highway speeds with bigger vehicles. And as far as braking is concerned, you do have your brake pedal that will use the actual service brakes, as they're called, the brakes that are out by the wheels. You do also have regenerative braking, as with every other electric car, where you can lift your foot off the throttle and the car will slow down on its own, and it will take all of that energy that you would otherwise be wasting and dump it back into the batteries. The MX-30 doesn't really let you do full-on regen braking like a lot of other cars would. In a lot of other EVs, you can take your foot off the throttle and you can come to a complete stop just as a total one-pedal driving sort of scenario. That's not the case in this MX-30. What you do get are paddles on the steering wheel that on a gas-powered car with a regular transmission might be used as shift paddles. You can click them up or down a little bit to kind of give you more or less battery power versus regen is kind of how I'm feeling it. So you can have it in normal drive, or you can click it up to get a little extra power, which doesn't really feel like anything extra. Or you can click it down to, and it will substantially slow the car much more when you pull off the throttle, so it adds that regen effect. All right, well, we're stopped at the charging location that I found using the PlugShare app. Mazda gives you $500 worth of charging credit for ChargePoint, but ChargePoint is only one of several charging networks. I'm actually here at an EVgo station, which is at an outlet mall right off the highway along my route. So there's a couple different apps you can use to figure out your route and where you're going. I use an app called PlugShare, and that works with Apple CarPlay, so it works right in the car as well. But like I said earlier, the MX-30 can charge up to 50 kilowatts of speed. So it says it's gonna take about 45 minutes to get back to totally full, because once you get to 80%, the charge speed tapers off. Really easy experience plugging in here. EVgo wants you to download an app ahead of time, which I had done, so everything was set up for payment information, and all you do is walk up, plug the car in, and tell it which charger that you're at, and it starts charging. I will get notifications on my phone about when this car is ready. I don't need it all the way back to 100%, but 80% would be about the minimum of where I need it. So in the meantime, I'm here at this lovely outlet mall along the highway, and I'm gonna go find a cup of coffee or some jeans or whatever you do when you're in a place like this.
One pair of pants later.
Well, we're done charging. We are back on the road. I was there for, I don't know, 20 minutes, 25 minutes at the most, and it cost me $6.68. I pulled in with about half battery capacity, and I got it up to 85%, which was enough to get me to my final destination. I was only in need of 75 miles of range, and it got me to 90 miles. So should be enough to get me there, and we'll check back in when the roads get a little bit twistier. So backroads driving is really fun, except when you get stuck behind an 18-wheeler, and the challenge here is you have to pull out the pass, and this car has one rate of acceleration, but we've got a long space to do it. So this is full throttle. and it's just kind of one rate of acceleration. It is what it is. It's not snap your head back, but I mean, that still got us up to and a little bit above the speed limit, so not all bad. So as far as back roads are concerned with the MX-30, I'm on some 2-lane roads that are, you know, not the tightest of curves, but kind of big sweepers. This is a pleasant enough car for back roads. I think it comes a little bit more into its own because you're not looking for big power to pull out and pass unless you've got, like you saw, an errant tractor trailer. But beyond that, if you're looking for just kind of a pleasant backroads car, this is composed enough. I really like the suspension damping, spring rates. It feels very much tuned for a city environment in that I think it soaks up bumps well. It's soft in the right way without being excessively roly-poly or wallowy or any of that. It will still take a corner well enough. And of course, Mazda says that part of the reason it can take a corner well enough is because they kept the overall weight of this car down relative to other EVs, and that's in part due to the smaller battery pack because they wanted to focus on the driving experience over all else. And I think that's kind of a well-crafted marketing line, to be totally honest, because this car drives well. I don't know if it drives better than, say, the Chevy Bolt, which is kind of a similar size and can go 260 miles on a charge. So, you know, I question that. And the other piece of this that I haven't talked about yet is the price. And, boy, let's see if I can... We're passing a first-gen Subaru Legacy. We have enough power to do that. That was... okay, we did it. How nice. So price-wise, the MSRP of this MX-30, which is the Premium Plus, this is the higher of the two trim levels, comes in at $38,000, including destination. And Mazda qualifies for the federal tax credit maximum, which is $7,500. So, in theory, you can take $7,500 off of that, which brings it to, you know, $29,500 or $30,000, kind of right around there. And the problem that I have, even at that price point, is that two other cars exist. One is the Chevy Bolt, the other is the Volkswagen ID.4. And the ID.4 is not going to be quite as inexpensive. The Bolt is going to be very, very competitive on price. Both the Bolt and the ID.4 can do 250 to 260 miles on a charge. So in the Bolt's case, it's kind of a similar size to this. In the ID.4's case, it's a little bigger than this. And there's a lot to like about this car. The interior in particular is fantastic. The belt line is low. The styling overall, I think, is really fantastic and interesting. And the problem then is that the power is kind of middling. The battery range is lackluster. And those two things, you know, one, you can excuse one for the other. I would be okay if this had the power and torque it does if it could do 250 miles. I don't necessarily care about the claim that people only do 30 miles of driving on average per day. On an average day, I drive far less than 30 miles a day. The problem is, if I want to do a trip like this that's 130 to 150 miles, almost any other car I can buy, new or used, is going to have a range that will let me do it on one tank or one charge. The other problem I have is, even if I stay local, for those who know the DC metro area, and if you live in other big metro areas, yes, I might just run around the immediate city area to run some errands one day, but if I want to run out and do dinner out of town somewhere that's within, you know, a 30-minute drive or so, that's not really very far, I'm probably going to have to charge while I'm there at my destination, or I'm going to have to barely make it home with almost no range left. So, you know, this would have been far more easy to swallow 5 or 10 years ago when EVs were less mature. I just wish they had come out swinging a little bit harder with it, because they're so close.
Tomorrow.
All right, well, this trip isn't quite over. Obviously, I still have to make it home, and I had planned on plugging in this MX-30 at my parents' house using the travel charger, which plugs into a regular 120-volt, 15-amp wall socket like what you have, you know, anywhere in your house or your garage. So that's what I did last night. After dinner, I plugged it in, and Mazda says you can charge this vehicle in 13 hours on that travel charger, and I had it plugged in for about 14 hours. and I only actually got it up to about 60-something%. So I'm not quite sure what happened, but I'm currently driving in as much of an eco mode as possible here. I've got 52 miles to the charging station, and the car says I've got 58 miles of range, and there was not that much of a gap when I actually started the drive home. It was right on as far as, I had 74 miles to go and 74 miles of range. In any case, I reset the economy gauge and I am averaging 4.4 miles per kilowatt hour, but the way I'm doing that is careful acceleration, careful management of my speed. I'm only doing about 55, 60 miles an hour, which is appropriate for the speed limit. I'm not speeding at all. And I have the windows up, the sunroof closed, and I'm running the fan with no air conditioning. So it's a little warm in here, but I also don't want to end up on the back of the tow truck to go the final few miles. So I've built up enough of a buffer here. I've got the car in max regen mode, so I think I'll be okay to make it to that charger. Fingers crossed. Well, we did it. There's a mile to go, and I've got 6% battery left with 7 miles of estimated range. So I've averaged 4 miles per kilowatt hour, and I will absolutely make it to the charger at this point. The car sounds 2 warnings. It gives you one warning at 28% battery, and then it gives you another warning at 14% battery that the high voltage battery is getting low. Please stop to charge soon. So now that I've run it down to 5%, it's still letting me drive at whatever full speed. It has not impacted my speed at all. But I did notice at steady speed, at highway speed, it was starting to kind of pulse a little bit. I was holding about 55, 60, but regardless, we're here, so let's plug in. All right, that is it. We have completed the final charge of this road trip in this Mazda MX-30. I went from about 5% when I got here to about 72% for my drive home, which is more than enough to get me home and leave a little bit left in the tank, if you will. So I'm gonna get back on the road. Thank you so much for watching. As always, please be sure to subscribe right here on YouTube. Give us a follow on Facebook and Instagram. And if you want to connect with other LGBT automotive enthusiasts and motorsports competitors, head over to outmotorsports.com. We would love to meet you over there. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you for the next one.